Good evening. Good evening. I'd like to call our meeting to order. It is 6 p.m. Monday, April the 17th is our special work session for charter schools. The school board would like to take this moment to respectfully acknowledge we are residing on the traditional land of the Dene people. Our mission is to provide an excellent, equitable education and a safe, supportive environment so all students will succeed and contribute to a diverse and changing society. Ms. Richardson, would you please call the roll?
Mrs. Smith,
Here.
Miss Marotti,
Here.
Mrs. Matheson is excused. Mrs. Hardy,
Here.
Mrs. Burnett,
Here.
Mr. Dorn,
Here.
Mrs. Sanderson.
Here.
Thank you. The board has a quorum.
Thank you. So today, I would like to welcome our charter school principals and head teachers, and they're going to be sharing information with us. Up first is Borealis Sun, and it's to provide the charter school's 2022-2023 annual report. So they will be sharing an overview of that annual report with the board, and Borealis Sun is up first. Thank you.
Hi. My name is Stacy Foshi, and I'm the principal at Boreal Sun Charter School. It's a pleasure to be here today. I'm very nervous, so I'll just get that right out of the way. But what could be better than coming and sharing the amazing things that are happening at Boreal Sun Charter School every day? So, the philosophy and foundation of Boreal Sun Charter School provides a cross-curricular arts integrated program that's inspired by the philosophy of Waldorf education, which I am learning more and more about each day. State standards are met with significant attention given to the developmental model of the unfolding child as practiced in the Waldorf philosophy. This is our mission statement, and one of the wonderful things that we do at every one of our staff meetings is take turns saying parts of our mission statement so that we really attend to that when we're thinking about teaching our students, thinking about the head as well as the heart and the hands, and how we cultivate that in each child every day. In 2022-2023, we had some wonderful professional growth. We set our goal as the APC to make sure that we bolstered our reading instructional strategies. And some of the ways that we did that was our kindergarten teacher piloted Haggerty, a program to support phonemic awareness in our play-based kindergarten. We also purchased UFly foundational manuals, which are explicit systematic phonics manuals. We started with just one, but when we passed it around and noticed how wonderful it was, Eileen Dubowski, our long-term resource teacher, said, "Oh, I'd love to have one of those as well." And her aide said, "I want one too." So we ended up ordering them for all of our K-3 staff and both of our resource teachers. In October, Boreal Sun's Academic Policy Committee participated in a 2-day charter APC and principals workshop where we provided the Alaska Association of School Boards provided us with a workshop model. We were joined by Lori Beam and Luke Minor. And these help set the stage for our new APC members. I created binders for them. They enjoyed a lot of getting to talk with other charter schools. And I think it would be really helpful if we had more meetings like that where all of our charter schools would get together and share information because we learned a lot from other schools. Some of the goals that we set for ourselves as an APC were to hold meetings in person and also have a Google Meet link so that the community members could participate online. And then for each of our committees, we adopted operating procedures. We also set goals for those committees. So for example, we have a beautification committee and we set a couple of goals for that committee. And then they check in with us once they're finished with those goals so that we can select some more goals for them to work on. In November, our staff engaged in more ALICE training and review. We had a lot of discussions about situational awareness. At our school, it's important that our teachers, when they're going outside in the woods that's in the back of our school and also over the park, be very aware of their surroundings. We labeled all of our rooms from the outside and the inside, which was something that we learned from the incident that happened at Lathrop. And we practiced those procedures. We noticed that we had some things that we could improve in. A gate was locked to our playground, and just really practicing that on that day helped us figure out how to put things in place that are going to make our students more safe. In March, we partnered just this last month with Kelly Lynch, and she's been coming into our school weekly with many elders, doing a lot of crafts. Our students work with their hands a lot, so she said, I have to up my game just a little bit for your crafts, and she partnered with Heidi Collins to say, oh, we really want to use birch when we're making the dream catchers, and those are just some of the examples that I use when talking about the different crafts that they're doing with students in the school. And then on, I believe it's the 8th of May, we're going to have a talking circle about the land acknowledgement, because that's something that we say every Friday in our assembly, and we want everyone to know and understand why we're participating in saying the land acknowledgement and what it means to us. We did some recruiting and outreach in that when we were getting ready for our lottery, we posted things on our Facebook page and also on our website. We also have these great boreal sun rocks that we hide throughout our town, and they can also, on the back, it tells some information about boreal sun. So I noticed when I was looking over some of the things that the other charter schools could do, I can definitely learn from a few things that Jared's doing, and putting up flyers at some of the preschools and things like that. Boreal Sun did receive, though, 150 applications for the fall 2023-2024 school year enrollment, and we've already seated all of our students for the lottery. We ended up raising our PTR to 22 in kindergarten, 24 in first grade, 24 in second grade, 25 in third through fifth grade, 25 in sixth through eighth grade, and eighth grade still have some openings that we hope to fill. Some of our accomplishments this year, one of the things that they wanted to put first was that we hired a principal, and I think that's an exciting thing this year that happened. Our APC held both their first special election and regular election. 7th and 8th grade classes participated in the tea race. Thanks for inviting us to come there, Josh. They had a wonderful time, and I just saw all the pictures from that experience. Our 3rd grade has helped out the community, the Fairbanks Community Food Bank, for weeks. I think they just told me that they packed 6,000 pounds of food, I believe, this last week. And they were so excited to have our 3rd graders and all those volunteers that help support that. We participated in the science fair, had our first spelling bee, which was very exciting. We hosted an amazing math and science night with over 100 participants. The school was filled with folks. We had Tara Devon and Mackenzie from Teaching and Learning come down and write these amazing math questions so that it would be like a scavenger hunt through the building. There was the planetarium during the day, as well as that evening, all kinds of math games. I'd like to say thank you to Robin Atkins that helped out with that. She has a student in our school. She did a lot of the planning and got a lot of the door prizes for that. We established a beautification committee, changed our statement to an equity and racial justice statement from the disembowelment statement that we had. The third grade also hosted a farmer's market and plants. They'll do a plant sale also at the end of the year. There are so many theater productions going on right now. Luke was over at the school the other day and he saw all of the costumes in third grade neatly hung on hangers, and they've been practicing. They're so excited to put on all of their plays this fall. A community member in our school established a neurodivergent parent support group, which has been amazing for all those families who need some extra support and just a place to feel comfortable to talk and share and really just feel like they have a space. They meet at our school, and they've had upwards of 14 folks coming to some of the meetings. We hosted a student intern all year from Western Governors University. She has been a delight to have and just really jumps in wherever she can. The fifth grade created a recycling project, and one of our parents built a recycling bin for us. If you drive up to Boreal Sun, you will see this adorable blue recycling bin with googly eyes, and the handle looks like a smiley face. De los Dos Muertos was also celebrated with the Tree of Life project, and we held our first in-person book fair, among many other things that happened at Boreal Sun. Those are just a few of the highlights. You can see all of the staff that we have there. I don't know if I need to read off all of the names. I think everybody can probably see those things. I put in some standardized assessment performance math and fall graphs to show the growth for our mean RIT scores. And then when you also look at the achievement percentiles, you see that there's not every time were we able to meet growth. So the staff is talking about some ways that we can bolster our mathematics instruction and looking at different ways to support that. I have a list if we need to discuss some of those. These are our scores for language arts and reading. That was a target for us this year, was looking at our reading in each grade. Callista McClurry, one of our teachers, did an in-service of how reading really is infused in the Waldorf model, and did a nice job of presenting in the fall a lot of different ways that we could take away and just go ahead and implement in our classrooms. Our student enrollment for Caucasian, we have 67.19%, Hispanic is 11.64%, Asian and Pacific Islander 1.58%. American Indian and Alaska Native is 5.82, two or more races 13.75. And you can also see a summary there of the girls, boys, military connected folks enrolled in special education, English language learners. We did have some student mobility from the fall to the spring. Some students returned to homeschooling or went to other district-wide middle schools or moved out of state. 169 of the currently enrolled students have indicated that they would wish to return to Boreal Sun for next year. And all of the 20 graduating 8th graders are planning to attend the district high school for the fall of 2023. That's a high school, mostly Hutch, but some are also going to West Valley. So they're looking forward to that. And then I think we get to the end. Here are all the APC minutes at the end. I don't know that I need to go over any of those. And I think that probably brings us to the end of the report. I think I did put in in a different document, I submitted our bylaws, and we really didn't make any changes to our bylaws this year. We just polished them up because it had said head teacher throughout, so we changed that from head teacher to principal. We put the term limits for the APC at the end as kind of an appendix, and so it was mostly just housekeeping right there at the end. I am not adding any waivers this year. I think it's, as a principal this year, I just kept it status quo. I don't find any waivers. I do, however, the APC is still looking at a behavioral clause that we might put into the handbook. So we will present that at the May 5th session when we bring the contract. That's okay.
Okay, we're going to entertain questions. So we have Ms. Hardy and then Mrs. Smith.
Mine is just because I didn't write it down. Can you repeat what you changed the class cap sizes to and then what they were prior?
Okay, yep, sure. So kindergarten was capped at 20. It's now at 22. First grade and second grade stayed at 24. Third grade, fourth grade, and fifth grade went from 24 to 26. Sixth, seventh, and eighth grade are at 25. And our eighth grade is the only grade that's not full. And that was really why we raised the PTR in all of the other classes, is because we have a very small 7th grade class this year, but our APC voted to go ahead and help support those students to stay at Boreal Sun. So in order to do that, we raised PTR in the other grades.
Thank you.
Mrs. Smith?
Thank you. I just wanted to remind you and point out, especially because you're new, that any changes to the bylaws have to be approved by the board, so by our board. So that would be just something that you'd want to get on the schedule to bring to us, because they can't be put into effect without being approved by our board.
I did send the bylaws in a separate document, but they weren't in the
I see them,
Okay.
actually, but they have to be like brought as an action item to us, and we have to approve your change in your bylaws. It's just, it's something that we went through last year and realized that we weren't doing, and it has to be done. So it's just something to add to the list of items for
Oh, sure.
in the future. When you bring your contract, we can have a separate item for that, I'm sure.
Thank you, Ms.
Thank you
Smith.
for that.
I have a question.
Sure.
So on your demographics, the population of students you have is at 190?
196.
And so out of those students that you service, do you have a breakdown of your SPED students?
Yes.
And how are you guys managing? I think I'll probably ask this question all the way across the board to all of the charter schools. So how are you staffing and supporting those students' needs?
So Boreal Sun has a very high population of special ed students. I think our average is a little bit higher than the district. And so we have, as I mentioned, Eileen Dubowski as our long-term sub in that position. And then we also have a full-time aide that's devoted to serving those students as well. This year, I just want to say thank you to Kate Hall. Each time I called and asked for something, she was able to come through. I asked for a 1 day a week sped clerk because I thought it was equitable that Eileen have some support being a sub in that position. And so 1 day a week, we have a sped clerk at our school who helps to make those phone calls and upload any documents that we might have. We also have a remote school psychologist, Jeremy Metters, who meets with us as needed in any of our SST or IEP meetings. And then Marcia Nash was our remote SLP, and since she was remote for a lot of the year, we had volunteers that supported our students to come to and from those services, and then also help them when they were playing games or anything like that. They would provide those tools that they might need. That did put a lot of that did take a group of my best volunteers for supporting that. So I am working to hopefully either hire someone to work in that position when our SLP is going to be remote, or have maybe just one volunteer that's going to support that. I know a SLP that's retiring, so maybe I can get her to come and work
Right.
at Boreal Sun.
Thank you. Okay. Ms. Marati?
I just wanted to say great job on your climate scores. I saw that you had 40% of your students responded, so that's high in response rate, but also the scores across the board for engagement, safety, and environment, they were all incredibly high compared to overall district scores, so great job.
Yay, thank you.
Mr. Dorn?
Thank you for the presentation and hosting when I came over and had a chance to visit the school. Two questions. One is you've referenced UFLI foundations as part of your reading deal.
Yeah.
What's UFLI stand for?
UFly, it's pronounced UFly. So when I took one of the deed offerings about the READS Act from Lexi Demosky, she recommended, she said, if you're going to buy your teachers one thing to help them support the introduction of systematic phonics into the classroom, this would be it. So it was created out of the University of Florida, and they took, I believe, 2 years in order to create it. It's really comprehensive, and I think it's a great resource for teachers to have. And so really, it's a toolkit for teachers in order to teach systematic phonics.
Cool. So I'm assuming it's University of Florida language or something.
Yes.
Yeah, I was wondering what the acronym, but I really appreciate the description.
Oh, sure. Sure.
Great, thanks. My other question was, not to revisit, but Boreal Sun had some growing pains. It's part of all our lives. And just maybe talk a little bit about how your school this year has come together. You've already put in some things like the elections of APC, et cetera, but just very briefly, again, not revisiting, but moving ahead, how you've come together and where you're headed.
Yeah. I think any time you have a change in leadership, you're going to have a change in energy and excitement around a lot of different things that are happening at the school. And I'm pretty passionate, so I think I brought a lot of that. And then also, I think that some really specific things that the APC put in place. So I think the operating procedures for each of our groups and really holding fast to that was something that helped bring us together. Our conversations in person were really valuable, and agreeing as a whole APC to come together and meet in person, as well as all of the other groups. I think the COVID years were hard on everybody. Just being online was hard. And bringing it all back to in person is one of the things that I think really helps us just set off on the right foot. So,
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for your presentation. And next we'll have a Discovery Peak.
Stacy, you need to stop screen share.
It's not as easy as people think.
The purpose and mission of Discovery Peak Charter School is to provide North Pole and its surrounding communities with an alternative K-8 educational program. Discovery Peak provides a rigorous and innovative academic program through personalized ELA math and math curriculum, hands-on discovery, community-focused problem solving, and increased physical activity. Our students will engage in a unique learn-by-doing curriculum. The mission of Discovery Peak is to develop intellectually curious and capable young people who aspire to be ethical and compassionate leaders in their community. Student performance expectations. So we have not, with the integration of the AK Star with MAP this spring, we don't have spring MAP scores until a week after the window closes. So these are our 2021 to 2022 MAP scores, and then next year we'll present the fall to spring for this school year, since we'll have that data at that point. So the age normal curve equivalent, which is 43% for reading and 45.2% for math. This is off the data dashboard from the district. We also have our AK Star results from last year. For Discovery Peak Charter School, 38% of our students need support for English language arts, 27% were approaching proficient, 25% were proficient, and 9% were advanced. In the area of math, we have 55% in need of support, 26% approaching proficient, 13% proficient, and 6% advanced. So one of the things that we've done to address our math scores is we started a Walk to Math program this school year, which allows all of our students to be met where they're at so that we can focus on the standards that they need to grow with. Reviewing some of the goals from our charter is critical thinking to see and understand the relationship of different types of knowledge and how to use them to solve current and future learning dilemmas. There's a couple of examples of how we do this at our school. We encourage all students to utilize critical thinking throughout their education. One great example of this is our Science Olympiad team. These students use their critical thinking skills to create projects, problem solve, and learn complex concepts. Additionally, our students participate in many hands-on projects that help to develop critical thinking skills. Some examples of these projects include the Wax Museum and Iditarod project. During the Wax Museum, our 6th, 7th, and 8th grade students research an individual, create a poster with pertinent information, prepare a speech, and dress up as an individual to present the information to school and community members. During the Iditarod project, students from the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade cluster created a journal, tracked a musher along the race, researched the cost of food, gear, and entry fees associated with the race, and they also set a goal of walking 100 laps on our track to represent the 1,000 miles in the race. Students from our kindergarten, 1st, and 2nd grade classes had the opportunity to participate in a sports physics exploration. One highlight from this exploration was their study of different types of Olympic sledding. The students were able to study the focus and motion behind different types of Olympic sledding and then go outside and try the different types on our sledding hill. The next goal is community. We want our students to become ethical and compassionate stewards of their community. This year, our APC set a goal of having 2 community connections per cluster per semester. Just for reference, we have 3 clusters at our school. We have a K1-2 cluster, a 3-4-5 cluster, and a 6-7-8 cluster. Here are some examples of connections that our students have made this year. We had rock and roll, which is rocks and minerals. We had a wild and local class focusing on berry and food harvesting. We had multiple connections with local businesses who came into the school to speak with our classes. We had the North Pole High School students come into our school and share a coding program with our students. We had UAF museum field trips, collecting water from local sources for an exploration and studying it. We had different family members come in to talk about family traditions for a separate exploration. We've had many guest speakers. We were able to participate in the snowshoe race, and we had a career fair. For literacy, we want students to be able to read, decode, comprehend, synthesize, analyze, critique, and reflect upon numeric and written information gathered from a variety of sources. This year, we have 1 teacher enrolled in the letters training course that was offered by the district, which is great. We also have a teacher, which is myself, attending the Science of Reading Symposium at the end of April. As we gear up for the implementation of the AK Reads Act, we will continue to make positive changes in our school. Currently looking at, we had one of our clusters do a walk to read this year, and we'll be looking at doing that again next year. We also utilize Accelerated Reader school-wide to help support and challenge our students. For physical activity, we want students to engage in additional physical activity outside of organized sports and structured physical education environments. So we want our students to go out and love to move. This year we started doing whole school movement every Friday morning. During this time, every student participates together in a workout or movement activity. We also have recently purchased skis and snowshoes for our students so that we can engage in more winter movement opportunities. Additionally, we had a teacher attend the SHAPE conference that was at the end of March to learn and bring back ideas and information to our school pertaining to movement. For our student enrollment, for our demographics, for Caucasian only, we have 77%, African American only is 1%, Hispanic only is 6%, Alaska Native only is 6%, and 2 or more races is 10%. We have a high military connection in our school. Approximately 37% of our families are military connected. We have 25% of our students enrolled in special education. 4% are English language learners. We have a total enrollment of 195 students, and 96% of students indicated that they will return to Discovery Peak for the 2023-2024 school year. These are all of our current employees. And then here's some of the great activities that we've been able to do this year. We were able to participate in Artist in Residency program this year. During January, Teal Bells from Golden Heart Performing Arts worked with our students for 3 weeks. All grades participated in this activity. The residency culminated in a parent performance where each student was able to demonstrate the skills that they had learned. We also had a career day for our middle school students. We had over 30 organizations attend this career day, and our students were able to visit all of the tables and speak to all of our guests. In November, we had a soup cook-off for a fundraiser that was hosted by our APC. This event brought parents, students, and community members into the school. We have a wax museum on May 2nd that middle school students are participating in. This event is presented to the school during the day as well as to community members at night. We had a running club with 83 students participating, and many students also participated in races at other schools. We had 3 Battle of the Books teams. Our 3rd, 4th grade team took 7th at the district competition. Our 5th, 6th grade team took 10th at the district competition. And our 7th, 8th grade team took 1st at the district competition and went on to take 5th at the state competition. For science fair, we had 91 students participate in our school science fair and 29 students participate at the district level science fair. And this year we had a new Science Olympiad team. This was the first year participating in this competition, and our team Bazinga took 1st place at the state competition at UAF and is now traveling to nationals in Wichita, Kansas to compete at the end of May. Our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade teachers hosted a Glow into Spring social, which is a huge hit. This event featured dancing, a glow-in-the-dark face paint, an obstacle course, and food. Our PTA hosted a March and Madness event. This was free for our school community and featured Minute to Win It games for students to play. We had 3 orientation meetings for the coming school year. Each of these meetings was well attended by prospective families. This year, our school raised $1,192 for the local senior center in North Pole through our Cents for Seniors competition, where the grades all battled each other by putting cents and dollars into jars. It was a huge hit. The kids loved it. All Discovery Peak staff attended a CPR and first aid training at the beginning of the school year. At the end of each quarter, we have a Dino Data Day. On this day, students work through rotations that focus on movement, goal setting, reading, math, explorations, and Trek token acknowledgement. This event brings in a lot of parent volunteers and allows all of our students to interact in mixed groups of kindergarten through 8th grade students. This April, we celebrated the month of the military child with a Spirit Week and student recognition. We celebrated our military-connected children with a certificate and cupcakes. 37% of our population has a military association. Camping trips. Each grade level at Discovery Peak is participating in a camping trip this year. Our K-1-2 students are staying on school grounds. Our 3rd and 4th grade students are going to Twin Bears. Our 5th and 6th grade students are going to Twin Bears. And then our 7th and 8th grade students are going to Chino Lakes. All camping trips are taking place in May. On May 1st, we also have a neighborhood cleanup day planned where we will go out into our community to help clean up. And lastly, we have the Alaska Native Science Engineering Program, which is held at the University of Alaska Anchorage throughout the year. During March, 4 of our students were able to attend a week-long program. During this opportunity, our students were able to build computers and robots, and this experience will help them to prepare them for college. We do have waivers that we are asking for this school year. Our school did not have any waivers, or we do not have any waivers as of now. And so we are trying to get caught up, per se, in terms of waivers that many of the other charter schools have. There is a list of waivers here. All of these waivers are waivers that other charter schools do currently have. Many of them are with organization pertaining to our APC, different policies, curriculum and instruction, parent involvement, facilities, because we don't have a district facility, it's rented, the establishment of boundaries, attendance in and out of area transportation zone, student attendance, student behavior, handbooks. And then, I'm sorry, since nobody else is doing waivers, do I need to read each waiver? It's a whole, that would take a long time. I can if you want me to.
No, I think
No.
what we'll do is
No,
Okay.
we have the document that you're reading from.
Okay. So we did have a student conduct agreement that was approved by our APC on August 8th of 2022. This student conduct agreement is outlining our expectations for students. We have that They will attend school each day and follow our school attendance policy, which is no more than 10 missed days per semester. We have that they will follow the district discipline policy as stated in the Students' Rights, Responsibilities, and Behavioral Consequences Handbook. We have that they will respect other people and their property, that they will try their best, and that they will comply with the philosophy of Discovery Peak, including a willingness to work independently, be a good role model, contribute to the school community, and take responsibility for their actions. This does state that after the 4th suspension, subsequent suspensions may be cause for withdrawal from the school. And lastly, we have our tardy policy, which was approved by the APC on December 12th of 2022, which states that students accrue a 1/2 day absence for every 3 tardies in a semester. And then we're following the district definition of a tardy. There are no bylaw changes, and all of our minutes are attached. Our bylaws were updated last year in 2022.
Are there any questions at this time? Ms. Hardy?
And going through your minutes, it looks like you guys recently approved to go to a 4-day school week, or can you, said the time changes, and then that's what I was confused by. So that's why I'm asking.
Okay, yes, so we're still a 5-day school week,
Okay.
but we extended our school day for 30 minutes Monday through Thursday. Yep, so currently our students were going to school from 8 to 2 Monday through Thursday and 8 to 1:30 Monday through Friday. I'm sorry, on a Friday. We changed it to 8 to 2:30 Monday through Thursday. Friday is still the same at 8 to 1:30.
Ms. Barati?
Thank you for the presentation. Can you let us know your PTR, your class sizes?
Yes, all of our classes are kept at 22,
Across all grades.
all grades.
I have other questions, but I can hold.
You can have a follow-up, and I'll go to someone else.
Okay. Well, it's not a follow-up to that one. It's a whole new question.
You can ask the whole new question, then I'll move to someone else.
Thanks. I noticed that your climate survey engagement was pretty low. It was 9% of your students responded to the survey. Do you have any plans to increase that the engagement in the survey so that we can get a better look at the climate at Discovery Peak through that data?
So this year, LSA did call, and I think we had all of our classes submit it.
So according to the data dashboard, only 17 students participated out of
For last year or this year?
that was 21, 22.
Okay.
Sorry,
Yes,
there
so
is no
yes.
data for 22, 23 because it's still in the year.
Yep. And we did have I believe all of our classes were able to participate in
Oh,
that.
that's great. Wonderful. Thank you.
Yes.
Mr. Dorn?
Got 2 questions. LETRS, as part of your literacy, is it an acronym for something? Just so the public knows.
Yeah, so that's a district-sponsored program focusing on phonics and phonemic awareness instruction.
All right, and do we know what LETRS stands for, or is it,
I would have to Google it. I don't have it off the top of my
or
head.
the district knows?
It's letters training, but I don't know what it stands for.
Oh, okay. I just wanted, it's an acronym for something, or just,
So just what
Right.
letters training is, it's a national training. It's quite rigorous. It's a 2-year commitment on the part of the teachers, and it is, I don't know if you remember Linda Moot Bell, if that.
Right.
It's
Okay.
kind of the 21st century version of that approach.
okay, that's very helpful to me, thank you. Yeah. And then my other question was, you mentioned about maps, and, your numbers are from last year because you had fall through spring. But what struck me as you pointed that out, and I understand that, just from fall to winter this year, do you know offhand where your trend is? What I'm trying to think in terms of, as maps is supposed to lead into AK Star, but the progress, the growth that you saw from fall to winter.
Yeah, so some of our classes did have good growth from fall to winter, and some of them I was really waiting for that winter to spring to see how they would come into spring. They weren't, some of the ones that didn't show great growth, I was waiting to see that spring
Okay.
data.
Great, thank you. If I could go back in the queue.
Ms. Marotti?
Thanks. Under your waivers, one of them is regards to transportation. So this might be a question for Ms. Moline or Mr. DeGraw. It states on page 12, we expect transportation to be provided by FNSBSD per our charter, but I know that we're not able to do that. So how does that work?
So it's still, oh, go ahead. My understanding is that our route is still on their list to do, but they can't fulfill it at this point. So it's not that our route's been canceled per se, it's that they don't have a driver to fill it.
Mr. DeGraw?
Yeah, thank you, President Sanderson. So the policy that we're following is when, so it's a priority issue. When the service is available, we allocate those services to charters. And unfortunately, we're familiar with the situation in our transportation right now, so.
We did have transportation last year.
Any follow-up questions or additional questions?
Yes, thank you. And because the first two reports both mentioned it, behavioral standards waiver, and the possibility of kids would be kicked out. I understand given many but and I don't know offhand if all the schools have this waiver, but I guess my concern is, one, what the intent of that is, and yes, it's a choice school, but does that put families potentially where, yes, we're sending students away, how that plays out in reality, or what you anticipate? And
So I modeled our behavioral conduct policy off of Chinook's. So Chinook does have an active one. And the intent behind the policy is to acknowledge that while charter schools have great opportunities, we also have limited resources because we are small schools. We do not have, at our school, we don't have a counselor available. We don't have a nurse available. At this time, we don't have a behavior intervention aide. That may be something that we look to fill in the future as needs shift. However, this is a safety net, and I can speak from my experience as a special education teacher that this was something that I had several people downtown ask me if we had at a previous school because we were really struggling and we're running out of options, right? So if we have a student who may be on an IEP who is severely struggling, whose needs are not being met at our school, and I know this is a really hot topic issue right now with the board, but if the special education department with all of that support determines that it's not the least restrictive environment, that parent always has the option to revoke services. Always. They can revoke services. And so that is something that can occur, and it's an opportunity for us to acknowledge the school that we're in and our resources that we have available, and it also follows the out of attendance area for just within the other district schools. If you're attending an out of attendance area school and you're really struggling in that placement, you may be brought back to your attendance area zoned school.
Can I do a follow-up?
Yes, and then I'll go to Ms. Harden.
Okay. And both for you and also for Ms. Fauci, since you both touched upon it. And just to clarify, it's not just for SPED teachers, and I think you started to say that, the
No.
attendance thing is, or SPED students. It's
Absolutely
broad
not.
across the board for any variety of reasons that might be there.
And it's not a one-off either. It's after the 4th suspension, which is following the behavior handbook.
Great, thank you.
Ms. Harden?
Piggybacking off of Mr. Doran's, what is being done, though, at your charters, but also all the charters, in appropriately identifying students who need IEPs for behavior and giving them the support? Too often, I know as a SPED teacher and having been in a lot of these charters, we're not identifying the students, and then, kids are being bumped out of charters because of behavior without having had any of their identifying rights met?
Yes, so we do follow the SST process. If a teacher has concerns, we hold an SST. We implement interventions. If the interventions aren't working as a team, we may decide to pursue a special education evaluation and get consent for that from the parent. Then we follow the special education process. We have great support from downtown. We work with our school psychologist is also remote, but she does come up into the state several times a year to work with students to do testing. We have a great special education teacher who works with students that have those needs. I work with students who have those needs. And we also are looking for it was as a discussion item for our April meeting, but it will be up as a voting item in our May meeting to hire a SPED paraprofessional.
Any additional questions? All right, thank you, and we'll move on. Go ahead, Ms. Millie.
Just for the schools that are presenting and for the board, if you're bringing a waiver, those will be addressed in the contract discussion. And this is for just your report, your annual report. So if you have waivers and they're part of the report, that's great. But those issues will be addressed at the contract discussion on May 2nd. Okay? All right, thanks.
I believe next is Effie Cochran and Mr. Snow.
Christina's got my computer wasn't working. I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach, so I'm just going to jump right in. We are in our 18th year right now as a charter school, and Effie Cochran was born out of concern that a group of community members had about the very high dropout rate for Alaska Native students, particularly between 6th and 7th grade. And then when the charter was actually written, it was written in coordination with Fairbanks Native Association. So I work very closely with Fairbanks Native Association and present to their board as well. And so that's really where we came from. And I think where we are now is we've basically evolved over time into an identity that I think I feel like is really, what's the best way to say this? I think we've kind of discovered who we really. There's been a lot of iterations of Effie Cochran, and we've kind of found out who we want to be right now. And so I feel quite good about that. That being said, we are facing some very significant challenges. And when you look at our standardized test scores, which I included in the report, obviously you're going to see the high percentage of students who are performing, essentially below the advanced proficiency. And then I would say also the loss of transportation in particular that occurred this year, in addition to the challenges that the district was facing overall with finding teachers, really hit us hard. So we entered the school year with a target enrollment of 155, and that included having 3 junior high teachers, and we did not have an applicant for one of those teaching positions. So right out of the gate, and that was no issue. I mean, Human Resources was working with us the whole way and facing all these struggles. So right out of the gate, we had to basically cut our enrollment, because I knew that instead of having 3 7th and 8th grade classrooms, we were going to only have 2. And so we had a target enrollment of I misspoke. We had a target enrollment of 145, and then we came out of the count period with 136, right? Previous to that, so before COVID, we were up at 155, 160 students. So you can see there's a pretty significant drop there. And then, as I mentioned, the other thing that really hit us hard was the loss of the busing, because we had a really high percentage of students relying on transportation services that the district was providing. I think the busing and then kind of the effects of COVID across the community have resulted in what I listed as one of our premier challenges, which is chronic absenteeism right now. We are, particularly in the high school, but I would say across all grade levels, struggling with families to get kids to school consistently. And that's just the bottom line. It's a real challenge right now. And so it's also the main, I would say, the main reason that we additionally received the school designation for comprehensive support because of our graduation rate. And so we're working with Chain, and there's work that's happening this spring and then next year to address the graduation rate. Interestingly, the way that they calculate graduation rate, you know, they look at that cohort that starts in 9th grade. And so when we received this designation, I was surprised, to be honest, and I had Ellis generate the list of that 9th grade cohort that led to us receiving this designation. And then it all made sense to me when I looked at the 9th grade, you know, so I could look down that list and I could say, oh, that kid was in foster care, and I know they're at Fairbanks Correctional Center right now. That kid lost his grandmother, dropped out of school, we're still in touch with them, they're working. You know, we could just kind of go down the list. So that felt a little better to basically have an explanation for that. But none of us at FE are satisfied with being in that designation. And we believe very much, you know, we're passionate about trying to get families to trust us and increase that attendance rate. So I'll be honest, it's been a tough 2.5 years. And the other thing, I represent the only high school charter school here, but the incidence of behaviors and suspensions have all spiked noticeably, and I find that a greater and greater amount of my time is spent around issues that I would connect to families and kids being in crisis. So, you know, it's a slightly bleak in comparison to everybody else, but I also think that I need to speak honestly, and honestly, the Alaska Native community was profoundly affected by the COVID pandemic, profoundly. And we're seeing that as a school, because obviously if you look at our demographics, we're up in the high 80% in terms of our Alaska Native student population. Now, I'm going to flip and tell you why I'm optimistic, because I'm really optimistic. We have been engaged in a 2-year strategic planning process, and this arose out of myself and 2 other teachers. All 3 of us have been there all 18 years of the charter. So we've, you know, we've been there since the beginning, and it struck us that when we do decide to move on, that's going to represent a really important transition for the school, and we want to capture a lot of that institutional knowledge that we have. So, and actually, as I was listening to the other reports, I want to share some of this. I didn't even think about sharing some of the information from our strategic planning process with the board. So we began with focus groups which we did last spring. We did focus groups with students and parents and alumni and staff. And then we did a large survey across those same groups that occurred this fall. And then just 2 weeks ago, we did a day-long strategic planning session at FE with roughly 50 students, parents, alumni, and staff. And I'm really excited about what's come out of that, which is kind of a reaffirming of what our most important values are as a school, and then what is now starting to come together is what this group feels are our highest priority areas that they are now going to essentially direct me to develop action plans and get a process to address those. Chronic absenteeism being one of those that everybody was talking about, behavior being another one of those that everybody was talking about. So I'm really, it was really cool to put the invite out to these different parts of our community and see the genuine desire to come and be a part, to help the school, basically, that was coming from all these different kind of segments of, we call it our family, our school family. So that leaves me very, very optimistic that we're up to these challenges. And, the other thing I realized as I was looking at our AK Star test scores, and I actually have been helping proctor the recent testing and stuff, is that's a really good indicator for me, but I don't want to get overly focused on that, because I think probably the most important indicator is a graduate's ability to have control over their life and be self-sufficient and have choices and be independent. And we saw that as we asked for these different alumni to come back in. So I am optimistic even in the face of these challenges. I would say from the hiring standpoint, Ivory, we opened the junior high position and we got 27 applicants, right? So like a absolute complete about face. And then with our high school social studies position, which you remember last year we couldn't fill, so you had to take the gifted and talented teacher from a different school and just plunk them down at FE, unbeknownst to them. We got 3 applicants. So already super happy with how much energy HR has been putting into this. And I think that really, really reverberated out last fall, and it just affected everything else because I was handicapped from the start in terms of covering classrooms and then trying to, on the fly, find people to replace. And knock on wood, I'm hoping that's not going to happen. So far, so good. It's not going to happen towards next year. So I just met with Andy today, and he wasn't quite sure what I was going to say, but we're shooting for getting back to that 150 enrollment, right? So I'm optimistic that we can do that now that we've kind of got our feet underneath us again. And the other challenge that I had not foreseen is when the district shifted to a 6, 7, 8 model with the middle schools. We used to go recruit heavily in the K-6, right? So suddenly the elementary schools, because we only do 7, 8 in our middle school. So suddenly we had to kind of reformulate how we go about recruiting to bring new students into FE. So just lots of change, as everybody knows, just changes, and adapting and adjusting to those changes. But I would say, this strategic planning process in particular, and the snowshoe T-race that a number of the head teachers have referenced, it's like the heart and soul of FE is strong and resilient, and kids are persevering. So little bit of a different presentation, but I'd take questions.
Yes, ask the first question, then I'll go to Ms. Marati. Can you talk to me about how the collaborative piece between the Fairbanks Native Association Behavior Health, how has that aided the school?
Well, a big achievement this year is up until this year, they had some federal requirements that made it so that they could not, their clinicians were not allowed to see students at the school. So we had to transport students over to FNA who had been referred to services. That shifted this year. So now we actually have a dedicated space, and we have 2 clinicians who come over. And I think right now they're seeing 7 or 8 students at FE. So there's a pretty robust referral process now in place where myself and our family services coordinator, little bit like an intervention team meeting where we'll make a referral to FNA, and then an assessment is completed, and then services are delivered. So that would be one component of that. The other component, I actually sit on the FNA, the Community Behavioral Health Council. I'm one of the co-chairs. And not only has that greatly expanded my understanding of behavioral health in general and the services that are available, we actually just went down to Montana with a group of students to the National Native Children's Trauma Center. Network was doing a conference down in Missoula, and we took students down, and not only was I learning a ton, but giving kids an incredible opportunity also. So I feel great about our working relationship with Fairbanks Native Association right now.
Thank you. Ms. Marati?
Thanks for the great, unique and great presentation. Appreciate it. I'm just checking, I'm taking this time to check everyone's climate scores. Your engagement was 43%. That's fantastic, especially for secondary students. And your scores were high across the board, high engagement, high safety, high environment. So well done, and I appreciate all the hard work that goes into that. I work with quite a few FE parents, and if I had $1 for every time they fussed about the transportation, I could probably solve this budget issue that we have.
Yeah.
So I guess this question might be for admin, actually. Is there an ETA on busing for charter schools next year as a whole?
So not a specific ETA. Durham was recently able to get us back to the 90 route level. So we're slowly but surely adding service back. We've consistently added service back throughout the year. We started at a low point of about 75. We're up to 90. We're hopeful. Don't hold me to this. I can circle back with Mr. Hinton, our transportation director, tomorrow. I'm hopeful that we would be able to start adding back incrementally service to schools of choice at around the 100, 105 route level. But again, don't hold me to that. I'll confirm that with Mr. Hinton, and I can get some information out to the board. It's the challenge is that the nature of charter schools and other schools of choice are that they don't have an attendance area. Well, they do. It's the entire borough. So that's the challenge that comes with charter schools. So, but yeah, I'll circle back with Mr. Hinton and get maybe a specific route level that we could start to see some services added back to charters.
That would be wonderful. Thank you, Mr. DeGraw. I had one more question. Is that okay?
Go ahead.
Thank you. I hear you about the challenges that your students are facing, the foster care, their loss, their grief, and other things. Does FE have a social service manager or the ability to access one?
Yes, we definitely have the ability to access one. Yep.
And do you access them often?
All the time.
Okay.
Daily.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Did you have a question, Mr. Dorn?
Yeah. Thank
Go
you.
ahead.
A couple of questions, so I'll start with 2. When you were talking about the proficiency rates on AK Star, do you have a sense, because one of my concerns broadly is student understanding of what the questions are asking, how they're phrased, et cetera. Do you have a sense of how the results reflect that? I know we don't get to see the questions, but
I mean, I'll be honest about that. I think that one of our most significant challenges with the standardized testing piece is students valuing the process. In other words, I sat proctoring a retest today with a couple students, and one of them finished her science test in 3 minutes. Right? So, and this, we're filling out the sheets and doing everything as we're supposed to do, but honestly, I mean, and I'm not sure how this is at the younger age levels, but this feels more prevalent to me today, as having been in this game for quite a while, is just a sense from students of, I don't see the relevance of this. I'm not going to give this my time. And we all know how teenagers are. You can't force that, and so it's tough. It puts us in a tough position because I also want to see the data. I want to see how they match up. But honestly, that has become incredibly prevalent, to the point where the student who takes excessive time stands out in your mind, like, whoa, that, they're still going. So anyhow, I would say that's the biggest factor that I see.
thank you. And again, my next one.
You have a follow-up?
Yep, it's related to that. So could you talk a little bit about, I'm going to say, student growth from students that you may have picked up at 7th graders on through 12th grade? What do you see for those students who stay with you on their growth and progress?
And you're not just talking about test scores.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So I would say that major areas of growth include confidence and just basic belief in their own potential and their abilities. A sense of seeing school being relevant for them, not being told it should be relevant to them, but them seeing that relevance for themselves. And I would say probably having a better understanding of where they've been and what it took to get, well, you've been to FE graduations, what it took to get to that point. So, and then we joke about, the difference between an 8th grader and an 11th grade. It's that they're like different species, So, but mostly around kind of those softer skills of like their belief in their abilities and their potential and their sense of the possibilities for themselves and starting to think, just as a really quick anecdotal example, I'm working with a graduate right now who came in from the village. Both parents are deceased, being raised by her grandmother, made it through FE with a lot of support on an IEP the whole time at FE, but did our Career Explorers program. We was kind of one of those people who said, well, let's just have this student do this. And that's a program we do in collaboration with UAF School of Management. And it's real basic kind of career exploration college level classes that they do. They come down to FE. So this student just barely made it through that, by the skin of, and graduated from school and came to me in the fall time and said, out of the blue, I want to do the dental assistant program. Can you help me? And She is now almost done with Intro to Psychology and taking a basic 1-credit health class. And I honestly, if you'd asked me 2 years ago if this would have been possible, I would have said no. So that's kind of an anecdotal example of what you're asking.
Thank you.
Ms. Hardy?
Do you know what percentage of your student population is receiving special education services?
Yeah.
It wasn't there.
I cranked the numbers because I knew you were going to ask me this. 29%.
The highest.
And so we have a on-site special education teacher, and then we have a wonderful speech teacher who comes over from West, I think, 2 days a week. And then we also contract with a school psych who's out of state. And I think this is one of the dilemmas for Effie is the percentage of families applying with kids with IEPs it just keeps going up and up. And I know why. I mean, I think it's a mark of confidence in us and it's something to be happy about, but it poses a challenge for sure.
Go ahead, Ms. Hardy.
Do you have paraprofessional support as well, or just the sole sped teacher?
Just a sole sped teacher. We have in the past have paraprofessional support, and honestly, the reason we don't right now has been a choice on my part, because the last 2 times we posted the position, we never filled it. And it became one of those things, well, let's figure out how to do this without it, because it's been so unreliable to get a qualified person into that position. And honestly, it's something we're going to revisit, because I think it would be, ideally, it would be great to have a paraprofessional. I'd also like a behavior intervention specialist and a school counselor and a shop teacher, if you're doling them out.
Ms. Marati and then Mrs. Moline.
What's the PTR over at Effie?
So generally what we shoot for in the high school is a cap of 25, but we're significantly under that right now. And in the junior high, a cap of 18 per class.
Follow-up?
Randy asked me another question.
Moline?
So I would like to go back to the assessment comments. We all know everything rises and falls in leadership, and that the leader's the thermostat and not the thermometer, and you set the temperature in the building. So I'm just curious if you'd share what you're doing, leadership and the teachers, to change that testing opinion, that this doesn't matter, that we don't have to invest. So what are you doing as the leadership of the building to change that? And help that be a part of students understanding that they are capable.
Yeah, so we have an advisory structure in the high school. So each of the high school teachers has a grade level cohort that they meet with every Friday for an hour and a half. And so we started by just targeting that very topic. But with everything from teachers talking about their own educational path to past students that we've had who've won scholarships or entry into different vocational programs, et cetera. But obviously not enough. I need to do more. There's no question. I think the challenge is that if you think of just kind of the basic pyramid of, hierarchy of needs, right? And what we're seeing is such a high percentage of students whose food, shelter, clothing, safety issues are not adequately stable right now. And so when I'm sitting there trying to sell them on why they should give 150% on the AK STAR test, I understand. I don't think they're being disrespectful to me. In fact, I think they respect me a lot. I think it has a lot more to do with that. It simply can't register on their radar in the same way when they're worried about those other essential things. But I am in no way saying it's unimportant, and I think was really happy when the district went to doing the MAP test 3 times a year, and worked with Chain on that, and continue to believe that there's a way to use that data with teachers to inform their instruction. There's no question in my mind. So I have to kind of live it with the understanding of the reality, but then also this belief that we can do so much better. So, I mean, it's on me, you're right, it's on my shoulders.
Thank you. I just wanted for everyone to hear the efforts that are being made in making those assessments important, not just this assessment, but the reality of giving your 100%, because that's the kind of person you are. So thank you for that.
I have a question for you. How, if any, our Department of A&E been instrumental or supportive for your school?
So they're also struggling with filling positions. We had an A&E tutor for 10, 12 years, an absolute math genius who was wonderful. She retired last year. So she retired in spring of 22. They have been unable to fill that position. A&E's super supportive. I would say the highlight of our work with them this spring is they helped us bring in a couple of our students' parent who has over the years he's really revitalized the traditional method of tanning moose hides. His name's Tom Huntington, and A&E helped us bring him in for 2 weeks, and we had small cohorts of students working with him, and then he's going to come back, and that's a lot of really hard work. I don't know if anybody's ever seen somebody try to tan a hide, and it was so cool to watch. But I'll tell you, one of the coolest things is the students who participated are talking now, and I think it's a possibility of trying to do it themselves next year with only his kind of mentorship. So everybody's like, yeah, when we go moose hunting this fall, we never bring the hide. We're bringing the hide back for sure. We're bringing the hide back. And so we've kind of started to develop this idea that if we could get 2 or 3 of these students, and essentially they do it themselves, because Tom manufactured these tools that you use to do this. And just all of the different qualities and skills that doing something like that entail, it's really exciting, and I'm hoping that we can see this through. So that would be kind of my highlight, A&E collaboration this spring.
Thank you. And a final question, Mr. Dorn?
Thank you. When you have your strategic plan written out, would just maybe ask that you share it with.
Actually, I'm going to share with you the survey results too, because they were really, really interesting and would kind of sit nicely next to the climate survey that you keep bringing up. So I'll definitely forward that to you. I didn't even think of that.
Okay. Yeah, that'd be great. So my question is around enrollment.
Yeah.
And you're projecting to at least hit the 150 for this coming year. Could you talk just a little bit about your lottery results, how your, let's say, students coming in from the villages or those types of things that affect, and maybe what you did to try and reach those 6th graders or counselors within the school, whatever that, and just my last piece before you answer that is, do I have to reapply to be the elder to receive the cup of tea?
He was the tea drinker. So we do not have a lottery. And the reason we don't have a lottery is because our families approach enrolling their kids in school just differently than the other charters. There's no other way to put it. And so very, very transient, a lot of movement in and out of rural Alaska, a lot of movement between Fairbanks, Anchorage, and other parts of the state. So this kind of constant movement. And so our enrollment approach is essentially just this ongoing rolling enrollment. And so we have a application online. Parent fills it out. We schedule an interview. It's not a competitive interview. It's a basically kind of get to know you and get to know your needs sort of thing. So we've been doing these pretty much every afternoon all spring. And my plan this summer is we actually had some unspent obligations from an outfit called Seed Media. So we had contracted with them before COVID, and they helped us make a recruitment video. And then when COVID happened, we basically put everything on hold. So they're going to work with me, and I think it's going to be 100% social media campaign and we're going to roll it out in July. Other than that, I'll shoot out kind of a promotional blurb to put in different K-8 schools newsletters. I'm going to go over to Barnett this spring with a group of students and present. But it's a pretty fluid process. It's every time I think we've arrived at a really effective method, then something changes. So I would say the primary way kids get to us is word of mouth right now. It's familial and village connections. So
Thank you.
All right, thank you for that presentation. We'll move on now to Chinook Montessori Charter School.
I'm Christina. I'm the head teacher at Chinook, and I'm going to go through our annual report, but I'm going to jump down to page 7 so I can explain what our classrooms look like, and then I'll jump back up. At Chinook, we call our kindergartners novices, and we take in 16 new novices each year. I'm not going to read this whole blurb, but their focus in the novice classroom is to learn how to be at school. They demonstrate grace and courtesy, and they explore the community through field trips. They do snack shopping each week. From there, each of the 8 kindergartners feed into our 2 first, second, third grade classrooms, so 8 and 8. So each apprentice classroom has 8 first graders, 8 second graders, and 8 third graders. So there's 24 students in each of the 2 classrooms. And they learn to be leaders within the classroom. They go out into the community also. One big project that they do each trimester, we're in a trimester system, are expert files. It's a research project that parents do outside school hours, and each Friday they present their learning and they do a final presentation at the end of each trimester. And then the graduating third graders from that classroom go into the Pioneer classroom, again 8 and 8. So there's 8 fourth graders, 8 fifth graders, and 8 sixth graders in each of the 2 intermediate classrooms we call Pioneers. Same sort of thing. They become leaders, focus on time out in the community. And then from there, our 6th graders also do a passage project. I'll explain more passage in just a second. So 6th graders do a passage project. It's their way of proving that they are ready for the next step. And at our school, that's being a mentor. So they do community service during this month, and they journal about it, and then they present to their peers. And what we call mentors are middle schoolers, and we have up to 22 7th graders and up to 22 8th graders in 2 classrooms, 2 teachers, and they spend a lot of time. This year they focused on, some students did debate, some students did future problem solving. We are working on a math program that is more Montessori based than we had in the past, and it's the second year. Our 8th graders are currently on their 8th grade trip that they fundraised for the past couple of years, and they're in Flagstaff. So I'm subbing 7th grade while the teachers are gone with the students. But the big culminating project at Chinook is in 8th grade. They spend the summer going into 8th grade working on some of their passage. They do a service project and a physical challenge, and they do a project and reflect on it. During the school year, they do an apprenticeship where they spend a week working with someone in the community. So they think about their interests, what maybe they want to be when they're older, and they go to work instead of school. And one of the last things they do is look at their portfolios that they've had since kindergarten, or their past report cards if they haven't been at Chinook since kindergarten, and they reflect on it and write a letter to a future high school teacher, and they can give it to their teacher or not. And their last thing is to present this whole project to their committee, and their committee is their teacher, an adoptive teacher, a 7th grader, and their family. Lori's going to join one so she can see what it's all about. And then we grade them on a rubric and tell them if they pass, and if they don't pass, they try again, because we're all passing. And then we graduate. So I'm going to go back to the first page and look at our, sorry if I'm making anyone dizzy, our program goals. We have nine program goals. We want a stable enrollment for next year. 97.7% of our students are coming back. The students that are leaving are moving out of state. We want to partner with the community. We have a goal of at least 500 hours of community instruction, and we've surpassed that with our graduates working with community members, parents coming in to talk in the classroom. We've done a couple of artist in residence programs. We also have a goal of at least 500 hours of community service. A lot of that happens through the Passage projects, but we've also worked with the Food Bank, Stone Soup, and the Mission. We have 100% of our students on individual learning programs focused on academic self-discipline, responsible behavior. A lot of that comes from having weekly and yearly goals. Not only the teachers make goals, the parents make goals, and the students make goals, and we reflect on them each week. We have a goal of having at least 90% of parents indicate that they are satisfied with Chinook. Data from the 21-22 school year shows that of the parents surveyed, 77.3% rated us an A, 22.7% rated us a B. That is from the district data dashboard. We want to stay a small school with a small adult student ratio, not to exceed 1:24. We're not exceeding that. We have 7 classroom teachers, a full-time resource teacher, myself, and right now 4 classroom assistants. Our APC voted this last month, our last meeting in April, to go from 4 assistants to 3 for next year to balance our budget. We ask that parents volunteer 45 hours a year, and we ask that they log it. It's a Google form, and I monitor it. When I made this report, 66% of our yearly goal had been met, and that is a lot. 45 hours is a lot. And 85% of families have tracked hours, and that is up from last year. Last year, less families tracked their hours, and there's still a lot of parent help needed. One of our last goals is that we want 80% of all students to be at or above grade level in reading. Coming from EasyCBM and MAP data, 77% of our students in K3 are average or above grade level in reading. Our Pioneer classrooms are at 72%, and our middle school is at 83%. And to help us get closer to the 80% goal is purchasing a new literacy program. We had one class pilot You Fly, like Boreal, and saw great results. 2 teachers are attending the Alaska Science of Reading Symposium, and 2 teachers are enrolled in the LETTERS training, which stands for Language Essentials for Teachers of Reading and Spelling. And it's a it's a training that I am in. It's pretty intense, but it's knowledge and tools to help us be better teachers, so we can use any curriculum and do better interventions and support our students. Recommend it. And our last goal is that 100% of our teachers will participate in ongoing training or continued teacher research. 80% of our teachers will be Montessori certified. All teachers participate in training. 2 teachers are finishing their master's degree in elementary education the next 6 months. 2 teachers' letters. 5 teachers are Montessori certified, and 3 are looking into training through 2 different programs. And training was kind of on hold during the COVID era. So getting back into that. I can scroll to district assessments soon. We follow SST guidelines, so we meet and discuss. We have something at Chinook called intervention meetings, and parents can call them, teachers can call them. So if there is an issue, we sit down and talk. The head teacher, a couple of teachers, the student, the parents, and it's just a great way to have open communication. Our enrollment is stable. We welcomed 23 new families this year. Before the school year started, 1 student transferred out of the district. 23 of our 155 students receive special education services. We have 10 students on a 504 plan, 19 military-connected families, 11 reported economic disadvantage, and 5 in the A&E program. Here is a snapshot of our ethnicity summary from the district data dashboard. For the second year in a row, we've utilized the CAP system for our lottery, and it has been great. Very great management. We saw about an orientation is required before entering the lottery for Chinook. So we had about 100 families visit our school, and we had 130 applicants, most in kindergarten. I asked for feedback when families filled out their form when visiting the school, and most people learned about our school either from word of mouth, through the online lottery system, or through Facebook, but we also put flyers up at preschools and around town. Our current employees will have 1 less teaching assistant next year. We utilize an OT, PT, school psych, and SLP. Here's our board members. If I'm going too fast, I skipped one part. I'm looking for my major changes. When we renewed our charter with the state, our intent was to add 1 more Pioneer classroom, and we still intend on adding 1 more Pioneer classroom, so the 4th, 5th, 6th grade. So we continue to want to add that class. We would go from 155 students to 174 students. Right now, we take new students in kindergarten and in 7th grade, and as you know, middle school's tough. So taking new students into a new school just for 2 years is something Chinook has struggled with for a long time. So if we add a 4th, 5th, 6th grade classroom, for the first year we would have to add new 4th, 5th, and 6th graders, but in subsequent years only 4th grade, and transitioning a student from an elementary school into a new charter school for multiple years would be easier. Any questions?
Mr. Dorn?
Thanks. And you may have answered it. I was concerned or interested in the additional Pioneer classroom and how that fits in. So if I understand correctly, you would continue having an additional Pioneer class, primarily bringing additional fourth graders in, and hopefully enough students staying for 7th and 8th. Okay. The capacity of your school would be what?
We are working with our landlord and plan to, it's in our lease to add one more classroom because we don't have enough space right now for that additional classroom.
Okay, so adding the Pioneer class, and I guess my thought was, would you eventually maybe add another apprentice class or something? But that, right now,
Right now,
this'll
just
bring you to
Pioneer.
capacity, right?
Yeah.
Got to bring you to capacity.
Mhm.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Alrighty, thank you for your presentation. We'll move on to watershed.
This has been a long meeting, and so I'm going to ask Stacy to type in that code, and I'm going to begin. My name is Jared Decker. I'm the principal at Watershed Charter School. I've been there for a while, but I want to acknowledge 2 APC members who have been here since 6 o'clock. Jason Gillum is our APC chair. He's been on the APC for, I want to say, about 7 years. 6, 7 years, 5 years. Let's round up, Jason. And Kelly Mansfield, who's been on the APC probably for 7 years or so. So they are here representing the APC, and so they can also bail me out if I get myself into trouble. So you have the report that was submitted. I'm not going to go through it in detail. I'm last, and so I will acknowledge that I'm last, and I'm going to breeze through this thing. If you have questions, I love answering questions, so I'll handle that. We have, so the model at Watershed hasn't changed. We are founded on 2 tenets. That is place-based education and outdoor education, and I drank all of my free water. So that's our first one. Really, the highlight of the year is, if I was going to say one, our professional learning really centered around science of reading and getting prepared for the Alaska Reads Act that comes into effect next year. That took, I feel like we went from COVID to science of reading. It just has taken all the oxygen in the building, and so we are fully working on that and getting ready. To do that, we piloted M-Class, which the state has decided to adopt as their screening tool. I am working right now with staff to create an MTSS plan. And so that has been on the more academic side from school, of the school. On the APC side, we are beginning to develop a strategic plan to kind of take us into the future for the next 5, 7, 350 years, and they also revised the principal evaluation tool. So this is the second year that the APC has conducted a formal evaluation of their principal. We just finished up lottery season. Our lottery closed on our last week on the 13th, and then results will go public on Thursday. We'll start making phone calls on Thursday. The lottery was ran today. And then I highlight a bunch of activities and engagements that we've made that kind of focus on those two tenets of place-based education and outdoor education. A highlight would be our middle schoolers are leaving this year with a whole bunch of certifications. They got Hunter Ed certification, they got Alaska Food Worker certification, and that put that to work with a day of service at the Stone Soup Cafe. They're first aid CPR certified, so lots of job skills happening in middle school this year. And then so that's our staff. I'm cruising through this. Our standardized test results are there for your review. As mentioned earlier, we don't have math growth results for this year because we're still taking MAP testing. We're still within that window. So the percent of students meeting their growth targets is the same as what you saw last year. Mr. Dorn, to answer the question before you ask it, we didn't hit our target for that growth last year, so I'm talking specifically in reading, so I repeated that target on our action plan this year, and we were hitting that growth target from our fall to winter, but we haven't been able to see and that was reflected in my action plan. We haven't been able to see that in spring though. And then we're in AK Star testing right now, and so these are last year's results, and they're for your review, and I'll answer any questions about AK Star. Demographics are also there for your review. Ethnicity, the breakdown has been a topic at board meetings historically, so I put in a 7-year trend graph too. And then that is often affected or unaffected by transience, by the lack of transiency we have at Watershed. So we have 97% of our students from last year are back this year, and it's darn near 99% that we're looking to have continue on next year. I'm only going to be down one student. And then we only have 9 openings going into kindergarten for next year because we have so many siblings of currently enrolled students coming in. And then that brings us to PC minutes. Our PTR, Ms. Marati, is 22. Ms. Sanderson, per that, our SPED rate, our percentage of students receiving SPED services is about 13.6%. And I'm saying about because we've had students exited recently, and then, I'm holding ESERs this week, last week. So I think it's about 13.6%. And I will stop there. Questions?
Any questions? Mr. Dorn?
I don't want to disappoint. So I was interested towards the beginning when you were talking about the Alaska Reads Act and some of the things you're doing to address reading, not necessarily the act. But if I caught the implication correctly, you're anticipating Alaska Reads Act will have an impact on your school. Could you elaborate on what you think anticipates some of those impacts will be and how your school approaches reading and moves forward?
That's a big question. So the Alaska Reads Act will have I think a significant and profound effect district-wide, statewide. And we'll see that not just in schools, but we're going to see that in families. I'm going to try not to get too carried away with my response to that. In our building, it's going to have a direct effect on our scheduling and how we and our staffing and how we best meet and how we can meet the needs of kids and also meet the requirements of the act. So being a small school with a limited staff, especially when it's so difficult to find substitutes, it's going to make it incredibly difficult to have a cohesive, quality program that hits, we can have a quality program, I believe in our program, but to have the level of interventions that the law is requiring, especially with the stakes that the law is attaching to this, the high stakes that are attached to this law, I think that that's what makes me nervous, is when I have a teacher who suffers some injury, ailment, and is out for 2 weeks. Not only am I losing a teacher who may teach a core subject area, so I'll give you I won't say the most important, one of the most important, first grade reading, but that's a first grade reading teacher who's also teaching a first grade reading intervention to support our most at-risk kids. And then if I don't have a substitute, then I'm pulling another staff member who is also working to provide support services for students. Or I'm in there and I'm supposed to be working with a group who's doing that. So that's one of the big challenges. Did I just mention one? I think that's one of the big challenges. The other big challenge, no, I'm going to stop there. That's one of the big challenges.
No, give me the.
The other big challenge is the elephant, and I think the elephant in the room with this act is retention. Retention is horrible for kids. We know that. All the research says it's horrible for kids, and this puts it on the forefront, especially for our third graders. And the problem, and one of the big problems I have with that, other than we know it's horrible for kids, but the instrument that we're using, that I've been using all year, is a 1-minute reading assessment. It is a child sitting with me and reading to me from a passage for 1 minute. And the variance that can happen in a kid's oral reading rate, I'm not going to say fluency, because fluency is more than how fast you can read, but the variance that can happen is it's great. It can fluctuate 20 words per minute based on how familiar the kid is with any sort of topic with the topic that the reading passage is on, how the kid's feeling that day, whether I just had to discipline the kid for throwing a snowball at somebody at recess or earlier, or there's so much going on that that makes me really nervous too.
Okay.
And go ahead.
No, I was going to say, if you're done on that, I appreciate you going on a little bit more, because I think that's something that all of us, it helps all of us understand, not only your schools, but all our schools, and some of the things that are going through principals' minds, so, as well as teachers, of course. Thank you.
Seeing no, okay, Ms. Moran?
Thanks. I'm just going to continue what I've been doing all night, and that's you had a 42% engagement in the climate survey, and scores were super high across the board. So I just want to thank you and everyone for providing a great climate for our students to learn in. I did, and this isn't just for Watershed, this is the charter schools across the district. The percentage of students that are African American are extremely low compared to the district percentage, which is 10%. So our charters have 0%, 1%, 3.5, 0, and 0.5%. I first want to thank you, Mr. Decker, for providing the 7-year trend. That shows a lot of information that we need as a board. I was wondering if through the chair and if it's okay with Ms. Moline, if we could have that for the rest of the charters, to show the trending and see if there's something that we can do as a board. We talk about this every single year. And so at what point do we actually take action and do something? So if you could share your report with others and maybe help them, but I would love to see that trending for the rest of the charters, for the different ethnicities that are tracked.
I can do that.
All right. Ms. Hardy?
Two things. One, and maybe we could contact Mr. Ott about it off of Aaron's. The 2 or more races also seems to be really confusing because I know for like Boreal Sun it says we have none, but it has a very high percentage of 2 or more races, and that like where that comes in, how much is actually African American and something else. But my actual question was more just to Kate through the chair. Could you tell me what the average caseload is for SPED teachers at like elementary, middle, and high school? Because I don't know that.
No, I can't.
Okay. Could you email it to me?
There's a lot of variables depending on the age level, the size of the school, whether or not it's a district-wide program. I mean, to give you like I could divide out kids by number of teachers easily, but an average caseload, no.
Or just what do we normally, like, I know from being a SPED teacher, you know, I might manage 25 IEPs, and if it got to a certain amount, then I would have a paraprofessional, or like, what are our current operating procedures? And I know we're down a lot of SPED teachers. We're like operating with not as many as we've had in the past.
Yeah, again, it's going to vary throughout the year. I hesitate to even throw out a rule of thumb, but I would say a rule of thumb for non-district-wide programs, sort of straight resource kinds of caseloads, again, depending on grade level and that kind of thing, somewhere in the 20 to 25 student range. That's going to vary based on the contents of a given IEP and that sort of thing.
All right, thank you for your questions. So on behalf of the board, I would like to thank each of the head principals and teachers for coming and presenting your report to us. Thank you for being candid, clear, and to the point. It helps the board as we make our final presentation for our budget with the Borough Assembly. It also, again, reinforces the great work that you're doing, the opportunity that we have schools of choices, that parents in our community have chosen to send their students. You have multiple pathways and opportunities that you're offering at each of your schools. Meeting those needs for our students is very important to us. It's a great opportunity, and it's a foundation that we're building on, as Ms. Moline likes to say, in our learning communities. So thank you for your presentation tonight. It's answered a lot of questions and probably left us thinking on some things of how we can support you as we move forward in the new year. So, Mr. Dorn, do you have a final comment or question?
Yes, the question while we have everybody here. I'm very interested, and it's been referenced a couple times here, if we can get a preview of the contracts, some changes. I understand that were sent out for charter school considerations, what concerns, feedback we've gotten. As has been mentioned, we're expected to act on the contracts in just over 2 weeks. But since we're all together, this is a good opportunity so we know what we may be dealing with informationally there, and what we can expect might be coming back from the charter schools, what feedback your APCs and you as teachers or head teachers or principals.
Thank you.
So as far as the contracts go, those will be available, and I think that Discovery Peak is the only one submitting any waivers. Everyone else's contract won't have any waivers in it. And you've seen those in the report, that list of waivers. So I would encourage any of the board members that have questions about those waivers, anything that we can answer ahead of time before the contract discussions and approvals, go ahead and submit those so you can get as much information on those waivers as you need. And that's all in the report here, so you can look at those. And then when it comes time for the contracts, those will be out as a part of the board meeting. So we can get those to you as soon as I think we're ready to look at those contracts, or we will be soon. So we'll get those to you ahead of time. You can look at them, ask questions. And then at the May 2nd meeting is when we'll look at those contracts.
Follow up. Okay. I understand that they'll come to us for May's second meeting, and we'll get them a few days before that. But are there anything, and maybe I'm wrong, are there changes that we're making, any significant changes or changes that we should be aware of to look for in the contracts? And I know one of the things we also discussed last year, possibly looking at them being multi-year as opposed to 1 year at a time.
So first of all, I'll say that the contract that you'll see this year is significantly different than the one that you've seen in the past. The ones in the past were, as we discovered last year, not really outlining a contract. It was kind of a boilerplate vendor sort of contract. So the charter schools and Mrs. Beam and Mr. Miner did a lot of work on creating a clarity on the contracts for the charter schools, what they're going to have in them. So what you will see in this contract will look significantly different than in the past. So if Mr. Miner would like to add anything to that about what to expect, I think it's just going to be very, very different.
The only thing I was going to add is we have a sample template contract that we could send the board if that's okay with President Sanderson.
Yeah.
And then each individual charter is currently working through different sections in the contract that they'll add their own information to, and you'd be able to clearly see where those portions are. We did go through a process with the charters and seeking recommendations on language changes. Some of those were able to be included in the contract and some of those were not.
Mr. Bernard, I just have a quick question. All of our charters, they did the ASB update, and where they work with ASB to come and to overlook the contract and change language and stuff like that.
Yeah, I believe all the charters went through the AASB training this fall. Is that?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yes.
So perhaps through the president, if it would probably be helpful, especially if there are significant changes, that we don't all of a sudden have to deal with them on that Tuesday night. If we could get that preview and maybe highlight what some of those changes are so we understand before, and if we have questions, we
Sure.
can do that. And I'm concerned about, we've got, especially if there are significant changes, not what we've been looking at for the last several years, that we're not just have the weekend, to try and decipher what's new, what's not, that type of thing. So.
So what we can get to you now is the boilerplate, the basic template, and then what you'll see is the individual pieces for each individual charter school.
Right. And if you could highlight what those changes, we should be aware of. So the other question I had tonight is, which I've sent in before, is where we are on looking at charter school policy review. I know that was a big topic last fall. I know that there's a process to go through, but what's the update 6 months later where we're at on that?
So the policy committee met last week, and we didn't have any charter school policies on the list. There is a long list of policies that the policy committee is working on, so it'll get in the queue with all the other policies. And if Ms. Smith wants to add anything as the chair of the policy committee, that'll be on a part of what their work is.
And I will just say that as board president, that is something that we are taking on as a board, to be able to, look at the policies, schedule them out this summer. Out of policy committee, there will be some recommendations coming to the board from the policy committee itself and what they're working on currently. But as the board is aware that we have a tremendous amount of work in that area to do. So that's the focus that we'll be scheduling out here very shortly. Thank you. All right, again, appreciate all your presentations and being with us tonight and for your tremendous work. Do you have, Ms. Caitlin?
Yeah, sorry.
Just go ahead.
Do you want to speak into the mic for your question?
Like I said, I'm new at this. Are we going to, since I'm the only one submitting any waivers, were those questions going to be asked today, or will they be asked at the contract? I thought that the purpose of putting them in the annual report was so that questions could be answered today. I just want to clarify.
Ms. Moline?
Yeah, so the board has the questions now, so as their questions come in, we'll field them to you, and at the contract discussion, there may be more, but we're hoping to address those questions as the board has time to kind of digest the waivers and come up with their questions. They can submit those, and we can do that, and then have further discussion at the contract if we need that. Does that make sense?
Yes. Okay. I have a follow-up question.
Go right ahead.
We're coming again tomorrow to the board meeting to do our one-pager, and so we're going to actually present the one-pager again at the meeting tomorrow, correct?
Yes.
But not the in-depth report.
No.
Okay.
Mr. Dorn?
Just a question, clarification on the waivers consideration from the administration. Are there anything in the waivers that are not being considered? It sounds like almost all of them are common to the other charter schools. I just don't want to spend a lot of time, let's say, if I've got a question about this or that, if it's not going to get to the contract fees.
Right, as Ms. Osborne said in her presentation, all of their waivers are coming into alignment with the rest of the charter school agreements. So there's nothing, they're not going outside of anything that is not a part of our charter schools already. Ms. Beam, did you want to add anything to that?
That's exactly what I was going to say. They're aligned with the other charter schools. Originally, Discovery Peak had no waivers, and when Caitlin came on board, that was one of her tasks that she took on.
So all of those would be recommended by the administration to come forward?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. That's helpful.
And Ms. Osborne, thank you for including your waivers in the report tonight, that the outline of what you are saying that will come forward to the board.
Yeah, thank you. And I also have like this nice little binder if anyone wants to look at it with all of the waivers included printed out off of board docs, so you don't have to search for them. They're all in order according to the way they're listed in the waivers. Yeah.
Thank you. At this point, I'm seeing no further discussion. I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Been moved and seconded. We are now adjourned.